This video is going to have a little bit of different feel to it. Sean and I have been working on Virtue Spirits as an idea, as a brand, as our future for almost 2 years. Something that has been very fulfilling, something that's been a ton of fun, something that has been completely different than anything either of us have ever done. But we recently learned that there's an issue, and it's a pretty big issue. Something that needs to be changed in order to keep us safe in the future. Something that will actually remove Virtue Spirits from our lives entirely. I'm going to answer a handful of questions that have been on a lot of these videos, and then we're going to get into what has to change, why it has to change, and how important it is for us to change it. Stick around to the very end, because I think that it'll be worth it. All right, before we get into what's staying, going, leaving, coming, changing, not changing, which will be in this video, probably at the very end, you'll see something pretty cool. We need to answer some questions. There's been a lot of questions in a lot of these videos about how to buy this whiskey, how to get it. Is this just us doing picks with other people's whiskey, but we made a label to put it under? Lots of different questions. First things first, let's talk about the Essence line. We will have 3 different lines, I guess you could call them, of whiskey here. The Essence line is our single barrel. Think of this line. I'm gonna make really easy comparisons. I don't mean the whiskey's the same quality, age, we distilled it. I don't mean these things. What I'm trying to give to you is like, just think about it the same way. Similar to Buffalo Trace single barrel line, like Elmer or Blanton's or Rock Hill. How some people do picks of them. Also, they're single barrels even when they release them themselves. We have a bourbon essence, we have a rye essence, and we have an American essence. This just covers all of our bases. We can release light whiskeys, single malts, we can release bourbons, ryes, so on and so forth. These are things that we would find to be interesting. We have these so that other people can come and do picks with us as well. Clubs, stores, the future, so on and so forth. YouTubers, all of those types of things. The question that I've seen in the comment section is this just us doing single barrel picks with somebody else's whiskey? Now, some of this whiskey will be contract distilled. We've been contract distilling for 2 years, which is different than sourcing, similar end result, right? Contract distilling is where we pick entry proofs, mash bills, or the recipe. We pick our cooperage, which is the barrels that the whiskey goes into. And then somebody does all of the distilling part for us with those things, in mind. For example, the bourbon that we contract distill, one of them is a 20% rye mash bill. That would be considered our low rye mash bill, but it's a bourbon. They do that out at Sagamore in Maryland for us. We distill another high rye mash bill out in Maryland as well. And this year we're gonna start contract distilling rye out in Maryland as well. So are we doing picks with other people's whiskey? We're doing picks with other people's whiskeys is the same as Nulu, the same as Penelope, the same as Willet until, as of late, the same as some of the Michter's, Fort Nelson single barrel bottle your owns are not distilled by Michter's. The same as most of the Bullet picks that you had in the past 3 years that you fell in love with that were distilled probably at Four Roses, or maybe they were Barton. There's a lot of distilleries doing this. We're considered an NDP is what we're considered, a non-distilling producer. Let's move to the next lineup. Question number 2, are we only doing single barrels? We're not only doing single barrels. Thus far, we have only done single barrels, but this tank right here has what will be considered our first blend in it. Our blending line has a different name. No blends will be under the Essence labels, as those are all labeled single barrels. Our blending line will be the Omens. So the Omens line is barrel proof bourbon, barrel proof rye blends, barrel finished blends, American whiskey blends, and then an LE, probably Q4 most of the years. So what these lines are meant to do is these are meant to give us room to play, room to have bigger, large releases, room to have cool LE style projects where we kind of just get to do what we want, try and figure out how to push whiskey in certain directions. It'll give us time and it'll give us some room to blend and play with blending. This in here has a 35% rye bourbon from Sagamore mixed with a double-barreled MGP bourbon. This will be the first Spirit Walker label ever to come out, which Spirit Walkers are barrel-finished Omens. If you ever see an Omen release from us, that means it was blended. What that also means is it'll be different than the previous one. The point of the Omen blends is literally to differentiate batch to batch, blend to blend. One of the Omen blends that will be happening, that's currently actually taking place, is that huge tawny port barrel that's full of rye. There's 2 ruby port barrels over there, also full of rye.
Those will be blended together at some point, and then I'll be toasting them probably with some oak chains, and we're gonna try to get something real cool out of that project. Last line. All right, our last line will be, in theory, the biggest blends and the biggest releases, but at lower proofs. We've not announced the name of this line yet, but they will probably be somewhere between 90 and 100 proof. They will be a more consistent batched product. They will use the same sources of whiskey throughout each batch. All of this right here is our contract distillation from Sagamore. There's this amount in Maryland right now aging. So we have about 120 barrels of contract distillate in the last 2 years. We're probably gonna do somewhere around 120 more barrels just this year of the same contract distillation, adding a rye mash bill. What this is gonna allow us to do is create a volume product for the market. A lower proof, a lower priced product that is sustainable for us as a brand to have on a shelf when you drink it, or if you like it, or if your buddies drank yours because you took it out camping and everybody got a little bit tanked that night. You just go replace it for like, hopefully around $40. The goal is to have a shelf product that you can consistently find and rely on being pretty similar quality, pretty similar flavor profiles from batch to batch. The Essence single barrels, unless there's something wild and we had to have it and the barrel cost a fortune and it has a huge age statement and it's the best thing I've ever seen, those all exist in the 60 to 80 price range right now. The Omen blends, we have not released any, but those will probably be in an 80 to 120 price range from the seams and looks of those. And then the third line, hopefully, no proof of concept, I'm just saying it out loud, hopefully it's around 40 bucks. Another question that's in basically every one of these style videos is where can we buy it, how available is it, things like that. Best way for you to buy it from us is if you're anywhere near the tasting room. We've been open 3 Fridays in a row and probably open again the Friday which is tomorrow. Basically every other Friday, you can buy them out of the tasting room. Whatever's available in the tasting room, you can buy here on site. That being said, the other way that we do this is we have an availability for people supporting us over on our Patreon. Patrons are aware of when these drops are happening. We do work with Bourbon Outfitter to get the bottles across the country, which is great. We can get these to DC legally, and then from DC, they can ship them to quite a few states. Right now, those are basically your 2 best options. Now, we've run into a couple problems here. And just recently the severity of the problem was recently kind of brought to my attention. What happened is we named this company Virtue Spirits, obviously, about 2 years ago. There's an LLC filed in the state of Michigan. Our small distiller's license says it. Our TTB permit says it. All of those things. I had filed for Virtue Spirits trademark about 1.5 years ago. I am not a trademark attorney. I didn't get a lawyer to do it. That was a mistake. But I went and filed it through one of the online trademark websites. It does take the USPTO 12 to 14 months to get back to you on a trademark. We got an office action that it just was not approved. I talked to 2 or 3 different attorneys. None of them were very helpful. One of them truly was actually just an asshole. One of the people that I truly consider a mentor is BT. BT was the president of Sagamore for quite a while. I texted BT one day and asked for trademark help, and he's like, I got somebody that you can work with. I've got a lot of hours with Patrick, the trademark guy. We've gone over every scenario on planet Earth. We have discussed every possible option. We have went through who owns the national trademarks for Virtue. It's Anheuser-Busch. The problem with this isn't today. The problem with this is probably in the future. When there's a trademark issue, we don't have any protection. Rebranding down the road is going to be more expensive than it is today. And it seems like a worse business decision. This has taken about 1.5 to 2 months of phone calls, meetings, reports from Patrick, TTB COLA searches, USPTO searches, coming up with new names, seeing if we can just keep Virtue somehow along the lines of like adding a word before or behind, spelling it differently, all these types of things. Before you guys leave comments in the description as to what we should have done, I promise that we went down that road. I promise we tried to keep it. This has been a really terrifying and honestly not a great part of the journey so far. This has been the most emotionally distressing part of the journey. There have been a lot of nights, 4 a.m. wake-ups covered in sweat. And it's been something that I would consider pretty unhealthy. The more I talk to people like Jared from Barrel King and BT, and the more I talk to these people, the realization that it's just an emotional attachment to one word Right now is the best time to protect ourselves for the future. I did explain all of this to patrons a few weeks ago in hopes that everybody would be supportive in this journey. It was a mistake, it was a misstep, it is early stages, I guess, from the public standpoint, and I hope that everybody understands why we have to do what we have to do. We have to change for us, we have to change to be safe, we have to change for the future of this business. We don't have to change who we are or what we do. We don't have to change the plan. We don't have to change the path that we're headed down, and I think that we're headed down the right path for you guys, for us, for everybody. And I will stand by that forever, name or not. So, this is the last Virtue Spirits vlog ever. We love you guys. Thank you for being along for the ride. The next vlog here will be with a new name. Cheers.